The relentless freezing rain pounded against the cracked windshield of Liam's rusty 2008 Honda Civic, the worn-out wiper blades doing little to clear the blinding downpour. It was past midnight on a desolate stretch of highway just outside of Chicago, and the temperature was dropping dangerously fast. Liam, a 21-year-old college student, was driving home after a grueling 12-hour shift delivering pizzas. His body ached from exhaustion, his uniform was damp, and his mind was heavy with a crushing, suffocating anxiety. The American dream felt like a cruel joke to him right now. He was drowning in massive student loan debt, facing eviction from his tiny, unheated apartment, and the university administration had just sent him a final devastating warning. If his tuition wasn't paid by the end of the week, he would be immediately expelled. Sitting in his worn center console was a single crumpled $20 bill. That $20 was the absolute entirety of his net worth. It was supposed to buy him enough instant ramen noodles and peanut butter to survive the next 2 days until his next meager paycheck. If he lost that bill, he literally would not eat. As Liam navigated a treacherous, winding curve on the pitch-black highway, his faded headlights swept across the muddy shoulder of the road, catching the faint, rhythmic blinking of hazard lights. Through the driving rain, he saw a sleek, midnight blue Bentley Continental pulled off into the dirt. It was a $500,000 masterpiece of engineering, completely out of place on this forgotten rural backroad, and it looked completely dead. Dozens of cars and heavy semi-trucks had already roared past, their drivers completely ignoring the stranded vehicle, spraying sheets of dirty, freezing water over its polished paint. Liam's foot hovered over the brake pedal. Every instinct in his exhausted body screamed at him to keep driving. He was freezing, he was desperately tired, and he had his own massive, life-altering problems to worry about. But as he looked at the dark windows of the stranded luxury car, a deep, ingrained sense of empathy anchored him. He knew exactly what it felt like to be invisible, helpless, and completely ignored by the world. Taking a deep breath, Liam pulled his beat-up Honda onto the muddy shoulder, his headlights illuminating the torrential rain between the two cars. Liam pulled his hood up and stepped out into the freezing storm. He jogged over to the driver's side of the Bentley and knocked gently on the thick, tinted acoustic glass. The window rolled down just a few inches, revealing an elderly man in a bespoke cashmere suit. The man looked pale, profoundly stressed, and remarkably vulnerable despite his obvious wealth. "Are you all right, sir?" Liam yelled over the deafening roar of the wind. The older man let out a heavy, shaking sigh of relief. "Thank God someone finally stopped," the man said, his voice trembling slightly from the bitter cold. "I hit a massive piece of debris a few miles back. It completely shredded my rear tire, and to make matters worse, I think the impact damaged my fuel line. My tank is completely empty, my phone battery is dead, and in my rush to leave the city, I left my briefcase and wallet at the office. I've been sitting here in the dark for 2 hours. Nobody would stop." The man looked completely defeated. All the money in the world couldn't help him on a dark, freezing highway without a phone or a single dollar bill in his pocket. Without a second thought, Liam nodded. "Stay inside where it's warm, sir. I'll take care of the tire." For the next 30 agonizing minutes, Liam wrestled with the heavy luxury rim in the freezing mud. His hands were completely numb. His knuckles were bleeding from slipping on the lug wrench, and his clothes were plastered to his shivering body. Once the spare tire was finally secured, Liam walked back to his own car. He stared at the crumpled $20 bill sitting in the console. His stomach let out a hollow growl, reminding him of the severe hunger he was about to face. But he looked back at the stranded old man and made a choice. Liam drove 5 miles down the road to a lonely, brightly lit gas station. He walked inside, dripping wet, and handed the cashier his absolute last $20 to buy a red plastic jerry can and fill it with premium gasoline. He drove back to the Bentley, popped the fuel door, and poured the precious fuel into the tank. When he was finished, he walked up to the driver's window. That should be enough to get you back into the city, sir, Liam said, his teeth chattering uncontrollably. The old man was deeply moved, his eyes shining with a mixture of shock and profound gratitude. Son, I don't know how to thank you. You are freezing and completely soaked. Please, give me your name and your address. I will send you a check tomorrow. I will repay you 10 times over. Liam just smiled, a genuine, warm smile. He shook his head gently. Don't worry about it, sir. We all need a little help sometimes. Just pay it forward when you get the chance. Liam turned his back on the billionaire, climbed into his freezing, rusty car, and drove away into the stormy night, heading back to a cold apartment with an empty wallet and an empty stomach, completely unaware that he had just changed the entire trajectory of his life. It had been 4 grueling, agonizing days since that freezing night on the dark highway, and Liam's life had officially hit rock bottom. Without a single dollar to his name, he had survived entirely on tap water and half-eaten boxes of crackers his roommate had left behind. The physical hunger was a constant, dull ache in his stomach, but the emotional weight was entirely crushing. Friday morning arrived, bringing with it the bleak, devastating reality he had been dreading all week. Liam stood in the sterile, fluorescent-lit hallway of the university's administrative building, holding a small cardboard box containing his meager dorm room belongings. He had just received the final email. His grace period was officially over. He was being expelled for failing to pay his crushing tuition balance. With heavy, defeated steps, he walked into the Dean of Students' office to sign the formal withdrawal paperwork, effectively watching his entire future, his American dream, evaporate before his eyes. The Dean, a stern man in a stiff suit, slid the expulsion papers across the polished oak desk. He didn't offer any sympathy or a warm smile, just a cold, bureaucratic explanation of the university's strict financial policies. Liam's hands shook slightly as he picked up the pen, the ink feeling as heavy as lead. He was just about to sign his academic death warrant when the heavy mahogany doors of the office suddenly swung open, completely bypassing the shocked secretary outside. The air in the room instantly shifted. Walking through the doorway, flanked by 2 sharply dressed security personnel, was an elderly man in an immaculately tailored charcoal pinstripe suit. He carried an aura of absolute, undeniable authority. The dean immediately jumped up from his leather chair, his face turning pale as he scrambled to button his suit jacket. "Mr. Sterling!" the dean gasped, his voice trembling with a mixture of shock and profound reverence. "We had no idea you were visiting the campus today. It is an absolute honor, sir. Please, how can the university assist you?" Liam kept his head down, clutching his pen, feeling completely invisible and worthless in the presence of whoever this powerful billionaire was. But then, a familiar warm voice echoed in the quiet room. "I'm not here for the university, Dean," the elderly man said smoothly, stepping past the massive oak desk and stopping directly in front of Liam's chair. "I am here for him." Liam slowly looked up, his tired eyes widening in absolute disbelief. Standing before him, perfectly groomed and radiating power, was the helpless, freezing man from the broken-down Bentley on the dark highway. It was Arthur Sterling, the legendary founder and CEO of Sterling Automotive Innovations, one of the wealthiest and most influential men in the entire country. Arthur looked down at the pale, exhausted college student and then glanced at the expulsion papers sitting on the desk. A look of deep disappointment crossed the billionaire's face as he looked at the dean. "You are about to expel the finest young man this institution has ever seen over a few $1,000s?" Arthur asked, his voice low but carrying a terrifying weight. Before the panicked dean could stammer out an excuse, Arthur turned his full attention back to Liam. The billionaire reached out and gently took the pen from Liam's trembling hand, placing it back on the desk. "You didn't give me your name that night in the storm," Arthur said, a warm, grandfatherly smile breaking across his face. It took my security team 3 days to track down the license plate of a rusty 2008 Honda Civic that bought a $20 jerry can of gas at a rural station. Liam was completely speechless, his mind entirely unable to process the reality of the moment. "Sir, I was just doing what anyone should do," Liam finally managed to whisper, his voice cracking. Arthur shook his head slowly, his eyes shining with deep emotion. "No, Liam. Dozens of people drove past me that night. They saw a stranded old man in a storm and chose to look the other way. But you stopped. You were freezing. You were exhausted. And I know for a fact that those $20 you spent on my gas were the absolute last dollars to your name." Arthur reached into his tailored jacket and pulled out a thick, embossed leather folder, placing it gently into Liam's hands. "I told you I would repay you 10 times over, but honestly, you cannot put a price on genuine human decency," Arthur continued, his voice echoing in the silent office. "Inside that folder is the deed to a brand new, fully paid-off apartment near the campus. Furthermore, my foundation has officially covered your university tuition, your books, and your living expenses for the entire remainder of your degree. You are graduating, Liam." As Liam burst into tears, the overwhelming, suffocating weight of his poverty finally lifting from his shoulders, Arthur placed a comforting hand on his back. "And when you do graduate," the billionaire added with a proud smile, "there is an executive corner office waiting for you at my company. We have enough smart people on Wall Street, Liam. What this world desperately needs is good people." Liam sat there, crying tears of absolute joy and clutching the leather folder to his chest. He finally realized that the crumpled $20 bill he had selflessly given away in the darkest, coldest storm of his life had just bought him the brightest, most beautiful future he could have ever imagined.